Alright mate, how you doing? Welcome back to another episode of IMO. Today is a huge one. We're talking about Neymar. Yes, that's right, Neymar, the man who has just smashed the world record transfer fee for any one player. In fact, he's more than doubled the previous record of Paul Pogba as he's gone from Barcelona to PSG for £200 million. This is an absolutely crazy transfer, guys, and it's got huge ramifications, not just for Neymar's career, not just for the future of Barcelona and PSG, but for the future of football in general. Let's talk about it. Wow. Neymar. You've really gone and done it this time, haven't you, pal? You've changed the game. £200 million. What a huge move that is. There was an article on the BBC website which said what else you could have bought for £200 million. It's like 4 private islands in the Bahamas, 12 private jets, 845 houses in the UK. I actually did some of my own financial research as well. I worked out that £200 million could also have got you half a Dan Brown from #United. Or, if you want someone cheaper, you could have got about 200 million me's. What would you rather have? One Neymar or 200 million spend doggy dogs? Don't answer that. Let's actually talk about the transfer, okay? This is outrageous. Talking about Neymar's perspective, first of all, I can 100% see why he wanted to leave Barcelona, okay? He'd already achieved so much there, and as part of the MSN strike force, the front three, probably the best front three in the history of club football, maybe that we'll ever see. He probably felt like he kind of achieved all he could in that setup. They're not at the top of their game right now. Real Madrid have kind of stolen that mantle, at least in European terms, and in the league, of course, this year. And he was constantly in Lionel Messi's shadow. Now, if he wants individual plaudits and he wants to be seen as one of the best players in the world, I completely get why you'd want to leave the club that has Messi in that club, because Messi is arguably one of the best players of all time, if not the best player of all time. Until he really starts to deteriorate, which I think we're probably still a few years away from seeing, the club has to build its footballing strategy around Messi. And not only is Messi the best, arguably, he's also Barcelona's own. He's been there his whole career. He's shown an element of loyalty to them. They're always going to show it back. Whereas Neymar, of course, has come from Brazil, done fantastic, but hasn't got that same connection with Barcelona. But interestingly enough, stats do show that when Messi's been absent from the team through injury or what have you, Neymar has stepped up massively. His goals per game and assists per game ratio is so much higher when Messi's not playing. That's because the football starts to flow through Neymar, much like it does when he plays for the Brazilian national team. But when Messi is there, along with Suarez, Neymar is just one piece of a puzzle. He's never the main man. I think he wants to be the main man. Now, I think he's earned the right to be. I think he's earned the right to go and be the huge name at a club, the Galactico, as opposed to one part of a team. Because as much as that front three is unbelievable, it just doesn't work long term. It was always going to come to an end. There was no way you could fit those egos on the same pitch forever and keep everyone happy. Suarez, I think, is okay playing kind of second or third fiddle to Neymar and Messi because he gets goals. He loves scoring goals. He's playing in a good team. He's earning good money. He's winning things most seasons. He's happy, and he's also approaching the latter stages of his career. But Neymar is hitting his prime right now. He wants to go and be the main man somewhere. Now, I don't have any issue with him wanting to leave Barcelona, despite the fact it breaks up the MSN. I think it's fair enough. My issue is that he chose to go to PSG. The reality is, maybe it wasn't that much of a choice. Maybe PSG were the only team prepared to pay 200 million. I find it hard to believe personally that someone like Man United couldn't have afforded it, but it's a lot to justify it, especially when you consider he's going to be on over £500,000 a week. That's after tax, by the way. That's 2 million a month. That's 24 million a year. That's ridiculous. So maybe PSG were the only team that could afford it, right? But the problem is, what does it mean for Neymar's career long term? If he wants to win Ballon d'Ors, is going to PSG going to have been the right move for him? For me, the only way he's going to get a Ballon d'Or now is if he wins something big with Brazil, like a World Cup, or if he wins some Champions Leagues with PSG. And that is exactly what PSG are trying to achieve with this transfer, for sure. But if he just goes there, scores 50 goals, and wins Ligue 1, it's not going to be enough. We've seen that with Zlatan Ibrahimovic. He was the king of the French league. He couldn't have done any more, but he was never considered in that conversation with the Messis and the Neymars because he wasn't doing it necessarily in the Champions League stage, and the league isn't as good. What he has done in this move is given himself a level of financial security which is just unrivaled in football, right? He obviously had financial security already. He could have stayed at Barcelona or gone anywhere and been very, very, very well well paid, but he's just taken things to a new level now. He's earning so much money. Like think about like when Beckham retired, right? He had so much money and he was one of those first sort of mega rich footballers to retire that he's now going to look to set up a football franchise in the MLS and whatnot. Imagine what Neymar will be able to do when he retires with the amount of money, if he manages it properly, he will have over his career. He's still got maybe 10 years left at this level. I mean, he's going to be bordering on a billionaire if he does things properly. But I do feel if he'd moved somewhere else, Neymar would be giving himself a better shot at being considered one of the best players of all time. But maybe that's not what's important to him. Maybe he's accepted he's part of a generation which exists at the same time as Ronaldo and Messi. It's always going to be difficult for him. So he just wants to go, win things. He'll definitely win things with PSG, even if it's just domestically, and score a load of goals and be an absolute hero and make a load of money. He's doing that at PSG, that's for sure. From a PSG perspective, they now have to go and smash the Champions League. If they don't, I think this will be seen as a failure. Can you justify spending £200 million on one person, a football player? I mean, can you justify spending £20 million on a footballer? It's all relative to the industry we're in, and this industry has changed financially so much in the last sort of 10 years. It doesn't even resemble the sport it was 20, 25 years ago anymore. It's a different world. PSG are essentially owned by a country, right? Qatar pretty much owned PSG. And when a country owns a club, as Arsene Wenger recently said, all bets are off. You know, rationality goes out the window. They can justify whatever they want. And more importantly, they can probably, as it seems, get around the financial fair play regulations. FFP kind of prohibits any club from tampering with their books by making extra investments in their team from subsidiary companies that they own and whatnot, and allowing themselves to pretend they're making more money than they are, essentially. But when it's a country that own the club, there's so many different ways they can put their money back in. I don't know how they can stop it. And of course, with these big transfers, everyone always talks about how many shirts it's going to sell. No doubt PSG will become a much bigger club worldwide now, particularly in Brazil. But for this transfer to really make sense for them, they have to compete on a European stage. That means they need to keep the rest of their big players, you know, their Di Marias, their Cavani's, their Verratti. Verratti is someone that has been linked with a move away for a while. They've got to keep hold of them. They can't afford to diminish the quality of the squad in other areas because otherwise, they're just going to stagnate. They've brought in Neymar, a massive marquee signing. They've given him the number 10 shirt, which Pastore has given up for him. But if they lose the quality elsewhere, because they didn't even win the league last year, let's remember, Monaco won it. If they lose quality elsewhere, they're not going to make those inroads because they've been competitive in the Champions League for a while. Haven't got to a final though. You know, they need to do better on that front. And we'll talk more about this later in the video, but what £200 million spent on one player means for the landscape of football in general, I mean, it's huge. It's changed everything overnight. The game will never be the same. Before we get onto that though, let's talk about Barcelona as well. What does this mean for them, losing one of their star attractions, one of the MSN? Now, like I said earlier, I think it was inevitable. I think eventually this was going to happen, whether it was obviously with the retirement of Suarez or Messi or one of them moving on. The thing for me is, if you're Barcelona, you could maybe argue that Neymar was the one of the three you really don't want to lose. Of course, no one wants to lose Messi. You know, I'm not saying that Barcelona should have got rid of Messi and kept Neymar. I'm just saying that Messi has got maybe, I'd say, 2 to 3 years left at this level max. Okay, he could reinvent himself, he could drop deeper, sure, but the effect he's having on their team at this level, I think will only stay for another 2 or 3 seasons. And even with Messi right now, and even with MSN, the whole front three, last year was underwhelming. They weren't, you know, when they started winning the Champions League a couple of years ago, and they had the MSN sort of strike force in full flow, it felt for a while like they were going to dominate football for the next 4 or 5 years. That hasn't happened. Maybe in other areas of the team they've been a bit weaker. Maybe they've not been happy with their managers, whatever. But they've had arguably the best front three in the history of football, and it hasn't guaranteed them success. So just having Messi certainly isn't going to do that either. As much as Messi is the main man and he's a once-in-a-lifetime person, and maybe you could justify not having success in every competition just because you've got Messi. Like, having Messi enough is success, I guess you could say, because he creates such a big brand across the world, and to have him in Barcelona is really valuable. But if winning things is what they want, I'd argue that Neymar could be the most important person out of that front three, just purely because he's got 6, 7 years minimum probably left at this level. He is someone you could build that team around. You can't build the future generation of Barcelona around Messi because he won't be there. You know, Iniesta's basically done as well. Suarez has probably only got a few years. Both Suarez and Messi are 30 years old. Neymar is 25. That is 5 years he has on them. And he's hitting his prime. Next few years is going to be when Neymar really smashes it. And they're not going to have him at Barcelona anymore. What they do have is 200 million to spend, okay? They could do a lot with that. There's some big players out there. Are they Neymar level? No, not for me. But do they need him to be Neymar level? The fact is they probably could have spent 100 million odd if they wanted to. They didn't need to because they had such a good front three. But now they do. They need to replace Neymar. And there's some good options. Coutinho is probably the one that's been most talked about. So they could swap a Brazilian for another Brazilian. Is he as good as Neymar? No, he's not. But he could actually work really well in that team because he won't need all the limelight. He can work there with Messi and Suarez, get them the ball, get them some goals, pick up some himself, and kind of be more of a cog in a machine. When you've got a Neymar, someone that's such a huge star in the world, he wants to stand out. Coutinho might be okay being, you know, amongst the parts and not the biggest name. If they fail to get Coutinho, could they strengthen from a fellow domestic rival? Maybe taking Griezmann from Atletico Madrid. What a signing that would be. He could play on that left-hand side. He could play in a number of positions. Or, one idea I had, I don't really think this has really been talked about that much in the press, but could they go for Gareth Bale? Gareth Bale has been talked about as someone that Real Madrid may have to get rid of if they're going to bring in Mbappe, who's someone they've been linked with a lot. We have seen, as rare as it is, players move between Barcelona and Real Madrid and vice versa in the past. Luis Figo being the one that comes to mind. Although he did go Barcelona to Real, we're talking about someone going Real to Barcelona. Equally, old Ronaldo did play for both clubs, but with another club in the middle. So Gareth Bale could be an option for them. Perhaps more realistically than Bale is Mbappe, the person that Real Madrid might have to sell Gareth Bale to buy. Barcelona could now enter that race. The main clubs been linked with him probably over the summer have been Arsenal, City and Real Madrid. Real Madrid being the main ones. But now Barca could look for the young Frenchman. They've definitely got the money to do it. They could play him and Suarez up front together. Messi in behind. It'd be pretty deadly. And of course they'd be stopping Real Madrid from getting him in the process. And Mbappe is quite an interesting person to talk about here because he's been linked with like a 150 million pound move or whatever, 150 million euros, whatever it is. And that's been said, how can anyone justify that? It's a lot of money. Well, for me, if you can justify spending like, 100 odd million on Mbappe, then you can definitely justify spending 200 on Neymar if you think those prices are right, because Mbappe has got huge potential. Unlike Neymar at 25, he's like 18 years old, so you could potentially get 10, 15 years out of him. Realistically, are we going to see him stay at one club for that long? Probably not. It's very rare these days, considering he's only been at Monaco for 1 year and he's already asked to leave. And secondly, he's still so young. I mean, he didn't score 40 goals last year. He had an amazing season at Monaco, but I think he's got 18 goals or something like that. There's no way of knowing if he's going to deliver on the scale like a Neymar or a Messi can. So if you can spend 100 odd million on Mbappe, you can definitely justify 200 on Neymar just on footballing terms alone. Not even considering the brand power he brings, the fact that he is the chosen one of Brazil. The main man over there, the captain of the national team. Gonna be their record top goal scorer in history, I'm sure. It's only a matter of time. He needs 25 more goals to equal Pele's record for Brazil. He's only 25 years old. I think he's going to do it. But I do think someone like Coutinho could be a better fit for Barcelona because I think they should avoid trying to have this front three of egos. And I think that's what would happen if they went with a Griezmann or an Mbappe. Coutinho strikes me as someone who could be a little bit more humble in there and just, like Pedro used to for Barcelona, just fit the system and make everyone around him better. Could be a big loss for Liverpool though, and it would be a shame to lose him from the Premier League. I'm slightly worried if Coutinho does leave. Liverpool then are going to come looking for Lanzini from West Ham, who I really want us to keep. But the big question for Barcelona is, does this end their era of dominance? The answer to that is, I'd say that's already finished. With Real Madrid's last few years, they're up there, if not above Barcelona right now, in terms of, what they've achieved and what they're going to achieve for the next few years. Barcelona now are going to have to dig in and get back to where they were. Their next few transfers will be key. But more importantly than that is, does it end the La Liga's era of dominance? The fact that PSG and the French League have been able to pull someone like this from La Liga, and in recent years we've seen so many of the world's best players like the Bales, like the Suarez's, go to Spanish football because they want to be with the Messis and the Ronaldos. Well, now when Messi and Ronaldo dwindle down and stop being as good, which is only a few years away, they're not going to have Neymar. I don't think he's going to go back to La Liga anytime soon. So the pull attraction of La Liga has decreased a little bit. Like I said, this Neymar transfer has had so many big ramifications, not just for PSG, Barcelona or Neymar, but for football in general. Considering the record transfer was set last year with Pogba around 90 million, and it's just more than doubled with Neymar for 200 in the space of a year. And it's literally like the transfer record spending has been going like this, and then went like this with Pogba, and then just went like this, bang. The chart is going off the charts, right? So what can we expect to see in the next few years? Surely we're less than 10 years away from the first £1 billion transfer. Scotty Pollock. It will be Scotty Pollock. But in all seriousness, it could happen. The only way it's not going to happen is if this huge inflation of money being spent in football, there's some sort of bubble burst. That's the only thing that could change it. Either a bubble burst and something happens in football to make this money not as prevalent anymore, like maybe the redistribution of TV rights that sucks the money out. Someone like Facebook or Google come in and buy those rights and make them available for a lot cheaper. That's going to change the amount of money available. That could change things. But more importantly, could a wage cap or a transfer cap come in? Now, I think people that like American sports and like the socialism side of American sports, that with the drafts and the worst team in the league getting the best player and salary caps and whatnot, would probably love to see this come into football. The reality is football is a world game. Unlike a lot of the American sports, it's played in a load of different leagues with a load of different quality teams across the world, okay? The only way a wage cap or a transfer cap could work in football is if it comes in everywhere. Because otherwise, say you instigate a salary cap and a transfer cap in the Premier League, everyone will just go to China, everyone will go to La Liga, everyone will go to the Bundesliga, everyone will go Serie A, everyone will go Liga. It has to happen in all the leagues. The likelihood of all those leagues agreeing on something is so far-fetched. The only way it could happen is if FIFA themselves enforce it, and the reality is I don't see them enforcing it because this money being spent in football has a drip down effect. Okay, the more money that's spent on these transfers like Neymar, the more money that gets moved around and often ends up in the pockets of people at the top of these organisations. Unless we start to see some responsible management of football at the highest level, these figures are just going to keep going up, and people, not just Neymar and football clubs, but agents and dodgy officials that are running the game are going to keep making money from it. The transfer of Neymar has just reinforced the status quo. It's made the top elite rich clubs, the PSGs, the Man Cities, the Barcelonas, the Real Madrids, the Manchester Uniteds, that bit higher than all the other clubs. The fact that they've got this money to spend and they're allowed to spend it, unless we do see some financial fair play, sanctions put into place off the back of this, which it seems unlikely, but unless we do, it's just reinforced the fact that they're untouchable, these clubs. The likelihood of a European Master League, or whatever you want to call it, is just around the corner, surely. No one can catch them. Sure, Leicester can do what they did, but they can't sustain it. They can't sustain it unless they're spending hundreds of millions of pounds every year. And one other thing I think is quite interesting about this transfer is the release clause. This was essentially a release clause that was activated, right? What is the future of release clauses, okay? Are clubs going to be even less likely to allow them to happen now they know that there's a club out there at all times that can afford to pay it? When Messi and Neymar's and all these guys' release clauses were set at 200 million, everyone thought, well, no one's going to buy them, are they? Like that 200 million on one player. But it's happened now, and it will probably happen again. People like Man United aren't going to be put off by a 200 million release clause in the future. Now they know PSG are spending that sort of money. So either clubs are going to be more reticent to give release clauses, or the release clauses are going to start being even higher. Who's going to be the first person to have a 500 million release clause? It's only a matter of time. But ultimately, I think Neymar was well within his rights to want a move from Barcelona. They didn't build a team around him. Maybe they would in the future, but he didn't want to wait around. He didn't want to miss out on his prime when he knows he's got more goals in him and more to show the world. Personally, I would have rather seen him go to a better league. Even if it wasn't the Premier League, I would have loved to see him maybe at Bayern in the Bundesliga. He would have smashed it there as well, but I think it's a more competitive league than Liga. Maybe he could have gone to Serie A as well, I don't know. I still feel like the Premier League is a great litmus test personally because it's so competitive. Yes, the best teams in the world probably aren't in the Premier League right now, but the gap between the best and the worst teams in the league is nowhere near as close as it is in the Premier League anywhere else. The Premier League is the most competitive league, and if you can score 40, 50 goals there, you're an unbelievable world beater of a player. If you score 40 or 50 goals in Liga, can you say the same? I don't think you can. But what do you guys think of the Neymar transfer? Did he make a mistake? Should he have stayed at Barcelona? Should he have gone somewhere else? Are PSG going to win the Champions League? There's so many questions. Give me your answers. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. And what do you think about the future of football, guys? Is this a good thing or a bad thing? Are these sorts of transfer figures going to make the leagues more exciting? Or is it killing what makes football the most important thing? Is the sense of club loyalty long gone and dead? I don't know, guys. I really don't know. It's going to be exciting to see what happens. Drop a like on this video if you've enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Subscribe for more. More IMOs coming soon, including my Premier League predictions, a roundup of the transfer window. Let me know in the comments what else you'd like to see me do an IMO on, and I'll see you next time. Until then, don't go changing.